Hello friends, Clage back with another Punishing Grey Raven guide today, and we are going to be talking about our newest S-rank physical attacker, Selena Pianissimo. Selena will be replacing Bianca Stigmata as the physical attacker on the physical team, as well as helping to fill out a full glaciation team. We will now have a full roster consisting of Selena herself, Alyssa Echo once you have her leap skills unlocked, and then Wansha Lucid Dreamer as the glaciation tank. So a new elemental effect will be in play with a full team available. I will do a glaciation guide down the road. The core of this guide is going to focus basically entirely on Selena's physical kit, because this character comes with a lot working under the hood and a lot to talk about, not only because she is a pretty complex character in her own right, but because her arrival is coming at a very unique time where we are a single patch away from the DMC collab. This is going to make my typical build poll recommendation stuff a lot more difficult and nuanced to talk about than normally, so there's a lot more to discuss when it comes to Selena writ large in terms of should you be pulling and building her right now, or do you need to focus on other things, aka the DMC collab? I intend to answer all those questions the best I can and give you the best possible advice, but we're going to go over all of the stuff you would expect. We'll talk equipment, evolutions, my pull and build recommendations, and we will address some of the stuff that I've seen talked about this character where a lot of people claim that Selena is a very expensive character to invest into. And if you want the most out of her, she is definitely more costly than your average S-rank attacker. However, I have been doing a lot of playtesting, a lot of research, a lot of number crunching, and I think I have found some ways to make her a very viable option if you want to build her without having to go super deep and do things like get to double S3 or triple S to make the character functional and output solid damage. So I'll go over the details of that once we start getting into the combat explanation and all that good stuff, but just note, there's a lot with this one. Selena's rotations change depending on what evolution rank you have her at. Her kit has a lot of working tools in it, so she is a pretty complex character. I still don't think she is as mind-bending as, say, Lucia Pyro Oath was to get your mind wrapped around, but there's a lot going on here. There's a lot to discuss, and even though I'm recording this part of the guide, having no idea what the final runtime of this thing's going to be, I have absolutely zero doubt it's going to be very, very long, and almost certainly will end up the longest guide I've done yet for a multitude of reasons. So let's start talking and get into what makes Selena go and how she works. So first and foremost, let's talk evolutions. So at S5, her hold basic attack or her hold dodge attack, as well as all her signatures, will trigger all available QTEs, the S5 standard. We always get this basically verbatim. At double S, which is the base level to have Selena be a functional character, she is going to gain 60 melody points after using her first signature and going into her flow state. The melody points are used to activate her hold to dodge attack in flow state. That is a big part of her core passive gameplay. It's a big part of her damage. So being able to use this immediately out the gate after going into flow state is very nice. In addition to that, anytime you use the hold to dodge attack after casting concert orbs, you're going to deal double damage until the end of that version of the flow state. We'll go into what all this means in the combat explanation and with some video examples. Don't worry if it sounds confusing. In addition, her signatures will now do 30% extra damage, and after leaving the field, once you have cast her second signature, Selena will now launch an attack with some lingering echoes, basically shadow-like versions of her, that will come on and do a total of 4 attacks for 2,000% physical damage per hit. So very similar to what Alyssa Echo does when she leaves the battlefield, and then Cecily will come on field and continue attacking even after Echo has left. Very similar sort of skill to that you just get free damage after Selena has left the field. So pretty nice upgrade there. Double S S3 is a big upgrade for this character. A lot of people will tell you this is where Selena starts to feel complete. However, as I mentioned earlier, I do honestly believe I have found a very decent solution for playing her at double S. We'll get to that when we get to the combat, but double S3 is going to give you the ability now where you use concert orbs, which are her specialized white orbs in the flow state. They will now fill her full ult gauge. Selena, similar to a lot of characters, has a faster ult and then a full-on massive ult. That requires a gauge to be filled while she is in flow state. Using the concert orbs at double S3 will fill that twice as fast, which is quite nice. Each musical note she consumes, which is also part of her core passive gauge, will increase the base damage of her next hold basic attack between 20 and 100%, depending on how many notes you have consumed. It does 20% per stack. And casting her signature will increase the base damage of all QTEs done by the entire team by 500% throughout the duration of the fight. That is a notable jump in QTE damage, so this is a very, very nice package at double S3. If you are a modest spender and you are intending to build Selena, this is a pretty good value point for you. At triple S, she is going to gain a musical note immediately, 12 more signature energy, and a regular signal orb upon entering the battlefield. She now has the ability to have up to 5 musical notes on her core passive gauge instead of 3. And when you use a ping to go into her hold basic attack, that's going to convert up to 6 signal orbs into musical notes. Once you have 4 or more musical notes, the base damage of her hold to basic attack will do increased damage. And during the lingering echoes, so when you cast signature and then have Selena leave the field and her echoes continue fighting after she's gone, they're going to deal 100% more extra damage. So just some extra gravy for the lingering echoes aspect of it. At triple S 3, 6, and plus, she is going to get increased damage on her signatures, increased damage on her hold basic and hold dodge attacks, and increased damage on all of her orbs. So, in general, the gains at double S3 and triple S are very notable, not only for their large increases in damage, but they are a notable uptick in her efficiency. Due to the fact that Selena's rotation does change quite a bit once you hit double S3 and changes again once you hit triple S, there is a lot more chances to be efficient, a lot more chances to lay on damage without wasting time once you get to those ranks. So they do have a lot of value with this character. I'm not going to kid you all. She gets notably better at double S3 and triple S. But again, I truly believe this character is functional at double S if that's all you can afford right now. So with that said, let's go talk about memories. For the most part, you can do a single memory build, go set it and forget it, and go from there. And that is going to be 4-piece of her signature set, Barana. As always with characters, you're going to be running their signature set. It's what enables their kits to run as intended, and of course gives all sorts of bonus damage and buffs. And then your second set is going to be 2-piece Cardi, harmonized to 4-piece with the harmonization mechanic. Even though Selena has most of her damage tied up in her core passive attacks as opposed to her ult, Kadi is still way too good to not use on this character. The increased signature energy gain, the decreased cost on casting signatures is more or less a requirement for Selena to flow well as a character and for her rotations to not feel very clunky. So this is absolutely the build you should shoot for. There are niche applications where you can swap 4-piece Kadi out for 4-piece Patton, similar to the same style set that Han Ying uses with her setup once you have her at double S3 or higher. But I would just recommend sticking with Kadi. There's not really a good reason to swap over to the Patton build right now. As for your resonances, this is a physical character, so unfortunately that does mean you do need attack 15 and crit 15 up top on all 6 slots if you want to be fully optimized. On the bottom, you are going to do the core passive instead of the ult. I know this sounds weird after just talking about how helpful and powerful Kadi is on this character, but trust me, you will want to harmonize or to resonate core passive for the bottom aspect. And when doing the build, make sure you have Kadi on the bottom as opposed to the signature set, since it does have slightly more attack. So that takes care of the memories more or less. Next, we need to talk about the weapon. I do unfortunately have to inform you all that Selena is basically locked behind this weapon. If you cannot afford to pull for a 6-star weapon right now, if you do not have the resources because you are preparing for Devil May Cry and you cannot make sure you are going to get her 6-star weapon, I do not recommend pulling and building Selena right now. This character, simply put, will not function without her signature weapon. It is just beyond a struggle to make her work with any efficiency and any sort of smoothness in her rotations. The big reason being, not only do you get the full attack bonus as opposed to just the physical damage bonus, she gets bonuses for using the musical notes, but the real big grab of the signature weapon is that casting signature is going to give you 3 signal orbs, and coming on field is going to give you 6 signal orbs. You are going to want those orbs for her rotation to work right. So, unfortunately, you need the signature weapon. I know that's not ideal. I know it's not fun, but it's just going to be a requirement for this character. And again, you're going to want to harmonize 4-piece Kadi to have her play truly correctly. So, you either are going all in and you're getting the signature weapon, or you should not build the character right now, straight up. As for resonance priority, it's going to depend on your overall investment and what evolution you have Selena at. Most people will tell you deadline timing is required on this character if you are double S or lower. I actually believe that's not true, and I will show my findings when we get into the attack demonstrations and the combat and rotation stuff. But in terms of overall priority, if you need deadline timing, it's always there. It always does smooth out things and gives you more orbs to work with. But after that, I would prioritize a combination of Afterglow, Matrix Lightning, and Incandescence. Do note that Selena in her flow state, which is the powered up state you go into after your first ult, does not really use 3 pings at all. All her pings become individual pings in that state. So Glorious Afterglow isn't going to be quite as good as it would be on, say, someone like Luna Oblivion, where you are 3 pinging literally all the time. So if you can only do 1 or 2, I would recommend prioritizing either Matrix Lightning or Incandescence for your damage resonances. If you want to go all 3 and go the distance, you can go ahead and slap Glorious Afterglow on there. And again, if you feel like you need deadline timing, if you feel like you're struggling with the rotations, it's always there to try and smooth things over. But in general, at least at double S, I do not feel deadline timing is required for this character to function. Lastly, let's talk about Selena's Cub. So her Cub is quite powerful. The big reason being, when you use the specialized skill, once you do her hold to basic attack with the Cub, this is going to give her a pretty notable attack boost of 40% for 8 seconds. That's going to cover the entirety of her big burst window in the flow state. So this Cub does give a notable tick up in damage with very little, blowback for doing so. And of course, having the extra physical damage and glaciation damage is always a nice bonus to have. The Cub does also have grouping on its core skill. If you want grouping, it's the second skill, not the first. Selena handles grouping pretty well on her own. The nature of her kit and her attacks don't really leave her struggling with enemies running away or getting away from the range of her attacks. But grouping is never a bad thing, and for me, it's always worth it doing a little bit less damage than it is not having the grouping available, especially if you're doing a war zone where you've got 3 to 6, smaller enemies. Grouping kind of becomes worth its weight in gold in that aspect. But a pretty strong Cub. That said, it is the Cub. It's probably the first thing you should pass on for the time being if you need to save some coin. But if you can afford it and you have the green cards to go get it while it's on 100% rate up, it will give you some pretty notable returns on her overall damage. As for the team compositions for Selena, it's going to be pretty straightforward. So you are going to be running the same physical team we've been running, but now with Selena instead of Bianca. For the setup that I am recommending, especially if you are going to remain at double S with just her signature weapon, you are going to want to be running Echo on the blue color. For Echo, you're going to be running her 4-piece Da Vinci and 4-piece signature set Signa. She still wants to keep her signature set for the crit buffs, so do not take it off. If you take this set off Alyssa, she just loses all of her potency as a support unit. So 4-piece Da Vinci, 4-piece Signa will set you up just fine. Again, you should have Echo harmonized by now. If you're a newer player and you maybe have just unlocked Echo, I do highly recommend prioritizing her as a harmonization target. This is one of those characters that just doesn't function very well without it. She was the first character debuted when harmonization became a thing in the game. So if you have been slacking on building Echo and you're planning on building Selena or Vergil for that matter, I definitely recommend getting your Echo online with 4-piece Da Vinci and 4-piece Signa. With Selena now, you will basically not be doing damage with Echo anymore. That said, especially at SS, there still will be some downtime between Selena and Han Ying where they are both on cooldown, and you will still be bringing Echo on the field briefly to basically go into her core passive and maybe ping an orb or two before your next unit will come back off cooldown. If you do this over the course of a full Warzone run, you'll usually build up one ult, and that's just free time stop. So you still will have Echo on the field, but for very, very brief windows. Selena goes on the red. She will be the leader going forward because, well, physical attacker, physical damage, pretty straightforward there. Han Ying will be on the yellow orb. The reason for that being when you set up Echo, you're going to want to have her awakening orb be the yellow orb. The main reason for that being that orb launches her at the enemy. It will ensure you do not have a fizzle when you bring your next attacker in because she will be right next to the enemy. Pardon the strange transition there. I had a coughing fit and didn't get to the button in time, so I'm now editing this part in. So, hooray. Anyway, let us continue. Han Ying will go on the yellow because, again, we will be using Alyssa's yellow orb as her awakening orb. We do this for a few reasons. One, it's the attack that launches her at the enemy. This ensures that your bring-in attack for your next character is going to connect. The range on bring-ins is obviously much, much better now these days, but still, it's always nice to just guarantee you're going to be right there ready to go. On top of this, the more important thing is that pinging an orb with Alyssa out the gate when she comes on and starts the battle is going to enable Lingya, which will pass on the free blue orb to the next construct you bring in. This is extremely important for playing Selena at SS without deadline timing. You basically are going to have to do this very similar to the way that using Lingya was more or less required to set up Han Ying's better rotation for Warzone. You're going to be doing a similar thing with the rotation I recommend for Selena. So just keep that in mind there. Selena goes on the red as the leader, of course, and this will be your team comp going forward. So no real need to change up much of the memories right now. I will note that if you want to get super min-maxy, you can build a physical support set onto Han Ying and resonate her tank class skill on the bottom for all of those. This is just going to be for Pain Cage, and it's very, very min-maxy. Anything outside of Pain Cage, you're still going to be bringing Han Ying onto the field. It's going to be more efficient than soloing with Selena. So if you want to min-max that, you can do, you know, a combination of like patent, fill up all that stuff, and then just resonate everything with the tank skill for Han Ying if you want. But again, that's pretty min-maxy. We have a lot of other characters to build right now. Don't feel like that's something you need to do right this second. But that will be the team going forward. So she will be the main damage going forward. Selena, that is. Han Ying is your sub DPS. And again, Echo will come in very, very briefly to mitigate the downtime between these two characters going forward. So, all that said, how do we assess the should you pull and recommendations and all that good stuff for Selena? This is going to be the most complicated of these sections I have discussed yet for any characters. So, first and foremost, Selena is not cheap to build. Even if you are doing the bare minimum I feel the character can function at, which is SS with her signature weapon harmonized. That's not nothing. That is a copy of Selena. It is a copy of a 6-star weapon, which means you could have to spend 15,000 red and or black cards to get there, because if you are at 0 pity on the weapon and you miss the 80% roll, you have to go to pity the next time. That's 15,000 cards gone. So this is not a cheap character to build. In addition, as I mentioned earlier, her SS3 and her SS are big gains. If you are looking to have the best possible physical team, and that is your focus over, say, Devil May Cry with the next patch, you're going to want to invest heavily into Selena. You're going to want her getting up to SS3 and beyond. You're going to want her weapon. You're going to want her cub. This is not a cheap character to build. Of course, in addition to that, DMC is the next patch. And with DMC, we get another physical attacker. We get Vergil. That is his role. And so, rather than giving you the usual spiel of okay, you need to get the character at minimum of double S, and then after that, prioritize the weapon, prioritize this, prioritize that, I'm going to start with the main caveat. If you are intending to build Vergil, if you are intending to take Vergil to triple S and beyond with his weapon, and the only way you can get there is by skipping Selena, I recommend you skip Selena. I never, ever recommend you skip new S ranks. It is almost always an incorrect play to skip a brand new S rank, just because it's always more difficult to get multiple copies of S ranks once they are gone from 100% rate up. We don't get 100% rate ups to go choose old characters very often, usually about twice a year. And then, of course, we get things like the base banner reset and the occasional S rank selector. But Selena's brand new. We're probably not seeing her on an S rank selector anytime soon. So if you are going all in on Vergil especially, if you are going into DMC and your main goal is to get Dante and build him, but you're not particularly interested in Vergil for whatever reason, then I highly, highly recommend you pull Selena. You are going to want a physical attacker to replace Bianca. Bianca is a very, very outdated character at this point. So then you should be prioritizing Selena. But if you intend to build Vergil, and you especially intend to build Vergil at high investment, I do recommend skipping Selena if you have to. If that's what it's going to take for you to get what you need out of the DMC collab, this is the one time I will tell you, hold your cards, don't roll, don't go get the weapon right now, focus on DMC. DMC is a one-time thing. We should absolutely 100% not expect to ever get another chance to pull Dante or pull Vergil. So if you have to save, if you have to build up resources to get where you want to go in the DMC collab, skip Selena. It's not a cheap investment. She requires a lot, and there will be ways to get Selena and build her later. There's always going to be more chances to get base S rank characters. That is not true for a collab, and it's especially not true for a collab this big that is probably never going to be run ever again. So, if you are going to pull Selena, if you intend to get her and build her, my recommendation is bare minimum is double S plus the signature weapon. It's not double S, then the signature weapon. It is both. You have to get both if you intend to use this character as your physical attacker. After that, I would say double S3 is slightly more value than the Cub, but they are fairly close together, and Cubs are cheaper to pull than it is to get another copy to go to double S3, so choose based off what you have available. If you got a lot of Cub tickets burning a hole in your pocket, this is a good character to go spend them on. Definitely recommend it there. After that, of course, going to triple S and beyond, if you're a big spender and you want to get the absolute most out of a new character, then that's going to be the route to go from there. So I can tell him blue in the face that this character is worth pulling, and she is. Selena is very, very strong. I think she's really fun to play. I think she is wonderfully designed and beautiful to watch in motion. But again, we are in a truly unique situation here with the DMC collab up next, and this may never happen again with this level of... There are big-time collab characters that people want and have literally started playing this game for. So be very judicious and really count up your resources. Really think about how much it's going to cost you to get where you want to go with the DMC characters. I made an entire video about what it's going to cost to take them to various ranks. So make your own assessment. You're going to have to make your own choice on this one. I can't just be my normal self and go, yes, pull the new S rank. Of course you pull the new S rank. It is definitely not that simple this time, and the decision is ultimately going to come up to you. If you are really torn and you want me to give my best advice to you, feel free to leave me a comment. I will do my best to offer what I can, but if you're going to have to pick and choose between DMC and other things, some things are going to have to get cut, and there's a good chance that what needs cut needs to be Selena for the time being. So, with all of that spiel said, and now what was probably a 20-plus minute intro just to get things started, now we get into the true meat of this guide, which is going to be Selena in combat, and there is a whole lot to talk about. So let's go ahead, get into training mode, and start explaining how she works. Alright, so let's go over Selena's combat kit explanation here. Selena has a lot of moving parts in her kit. However, compared to something like Lucia Pyra Oath, I don't think it's so many moving parts that intertwine with each other non-stop to create a level of confusion and have a lot of ease of losing track of where you are in utilizing the kit during a rotation. Selena's is a lot more compartmentalized, and it's a lot easier to split it into her two various forms. Right now, when we are on the field with nothing done, nothing going on, we are in base form. So Selena still has her black hair, and she is at base level, has not activated an ult, anything like that. Her second form is called flow state, as I mentioned during the evolutions. That is going to be the state where a lot more of your complex decision making and when and how to use her various mechanics come into play. When you're in base state, you basically have one single goal, and that is to build enough signature energy to get your first ult online, use it, and go into the flow state. So let's go over the basics in base form, explain how each part of the kit works. I truly believe you need to know the basis of every part of the kit, so that when you're actually trying to put these pieces together and form a rotation, that you better understand why we're doing what we're doing and when we're doing it. So this is, like always, going to be overly explanatory, and it's going to take a little bit, but I truly believe it's worth the time and effort, especially with these newer characters that are a long ways from being solved, quote unquote. So in base form, we'll start with bare bone basic attack. There is no reason to use this. You have absolutely no incentive to ever spam basics with Selena. It does not build signature energy efficiently. It does not build any of her core passives, and there is basically no mechanic that she relies on where spamming basics is going to get you anything done in any kind of reasonable, efficient manner. So you can basically ignore the fact that she has a basic attack string. You ain't going to be using it. Next, in base form, Selena has access to her red orbs and her yellow orbs. These are her main orbs for building signature energy and getting into floor state. You will notice that on the end, Selena has a blue orb. This is a permanent orb, very similar to like Ishmael's yellow orb that activates her buffs. This orb is always here. We'll talk about the blue orb in a minute. For the most part, the blue orb is a sometimes food. You only use it for very specific situations, and the lower invested you are, the less likely you are to be using the blue orb very often. So just kind of keep that in mind as we go through the base kit here. So as for orbs, Selena's red orbs and yellow orbs both have the combo mechanic that Ishmael had. Now, it's a little different than Ishmael's. Her orbs don't change icons and show that a combo is active when you do them. But if you do ping 2-3 pings of the same color back to back, the second one will be a different attack that has slightly higher damage modifiers and will do a little bit more out the gate and will have different animations. So if we do a base red orb 3 ping and then follow it up with another one, you will see after the initial stab, Selena goes into a flurry of stabs and then goes back to neutral here. The important thing about orbs, in addition to their combo ability, is that anytime you do a 3 ping, you will gain a musical note on the core passive gauge. In base form, this is the only aspect of the core passive gauge you will really interact with in any way, shape, or form. This is the only thing you need to pay attention to until we get into the flow state. The musical notes are very important because the musical notes enable Selena's hold basic attack. So if I hold basic, you'll see the rapier surround her. She goes into a dash attack, and we force proc Matrix. If Matrix is on cooldown and you use the hold to basic attack, you will always trigger Matrix. You will also notice that when Matrix is triggered, you get to use your blue orb. The blue orb can only be activated once you have gotten Matrix to go off. So just keep that in mind. You cannot press this whenever you want. And when you do press it, similar to Ishmael's, it will have a forced cooldown that cannot be circumvented. Even if you were able to proc another Matrix by some passive another character has, or just bringing in a new character on the field, whatever. Obviously, you brought a new character and the orb wouldn't be there anymore, but you get my point. This has a forced cooldown just like Ishmael's buff orb does, so something to keep in mind there. The main aspect of the base form is using the 3 pings we have available with the red and yellow orbs to, one, build signature energy. You see we've already built our signature up and can go into flow state. And the other part is, of course, building the musical notes, because the hold to basic attack is very important. So let me go over her yellow orb real quick. So very similar. If you do one yellow orb, you get a spin. If you do a follow-up, she will do the little hand explosion and knock the enemy back from there. the combo ability of the orbs in it of itself is mostly superfluous for this character. You're not going to be doing combos because the combos build that much more signature energy or they give her that much more core passive games. The combos are just a way to spend orbs faster, and that's really the only aspect of these orbs that you care about. You do not need to set up specific combos in base state with her orbs just to get where you want to go, which is getting your ultimate online. So let me do a reset here real quick and we'll go over some other stuff. Her red orb is also her bring-in attack. So if we bring Selena in and she hits the enemy, you will see she does the single stab with the red orb, and we now have a musical note on deck. So this is very important. You want to make sure your bring-in attack always hits because Selena wants a musical orb out the gate. That is very, very important for getting through her rotation expediently, no matter what rank evolution you are playing the character at. So with that bring-in attack, now we have one note available. The thing with the hold to basic attack I showed is, if you notice, this has a very long windup. This is not a quick to start up attack, right? Like, she goes through the whole animation, the sword starts surrounding her, she poses, then she does the dash attack. This builds good signature energy, and it has some unique properties that we're going to talk about, but in general, you are not looking to do the hold to basic attack raw out of itself, because that animation is very slow, leaves you open to getting smacked by an enemy, and obviously if you're trying to do rotation, it just wastes time, and we don't want to waste time. That's no fun. So let me get another musical note on deck. So the key aspect with the hold basic attack is that if you do it immediately after pinging a 3-ping, the animation for the hold basic attack is basically gone. There's almost no animation. It will activate immediately. And more importantly, while you are holding basic attack, you can hit another 3-ping, immediately go into that 3-ping, and you're going to get all of the signature energy from both sets of 3-pings you used and from the hold basic attack. What this means is that when you bring Selena on field, you're going to immediately do a 3-ping, hold basic, do another 3-ping after the hold to basic goes off, and you see Matrix as proc, so it'll actually be a Matrix ping, not a 3-ping. And then from there, you should have enough signature energy to immediately go into flow state. So what this is going to look like is, after you brought in, we're going to do 3-ping, hold basic, immediate 3-ping, bam. We have signature energy now. We are good to go into flow state. This is very quick. You can be very quick on the draw on this, and you're going to want to, because there is no need to let the entirety of these animations play out. There's no need to get all the hits. Selena is not the kind of character where she has to let her animations finish to get a significant amount of signature energy to go into her next state. So real quick, I'm going to show you what this actually looks like in practice. So I'm going to bring in, immediately ping, hold basic, ping again, flow state. That is how your bring-in should always look for Selena. You should be in base form for almost no time whatsoever. That is going to be the first goal. So let me go back one more time, because I want to go over a couple more things here real quick before we start talking about flow state. Again, you don't need to worry about what orbs you get. It doesn't matter what order you ping them in. Take whatever you're given and do 3-ping, hold basic, 3-ping. Immediately ult. The second you see the ult gauge come up, you can do it. So one more time, we're going to do this. 3-ping, hold basic, 3-ping, ult. That's all there is to it. That is your first goal with Selena. Doesn't matter what rank you're playing the character at. That will be your goal, is to immediately use a 3-ping, the hold basic, a matrix ping, ult. And now we are in flow state. In flow state, as you can see, Selena's hair turns white, and now the core passive gauge is actually doing things. So let's talk about that before we get into the various aspects of how flow state works. So the bright blue large section of the core passive game represents her melodic points. Her melodic points are what are used to go into her whole dodge attack that she has in flow state, which is a huge part of her rotation at any rank that you play. Unfortunately, flow state does have a time limit, so I kind of have to go in and out here, but we'll make it work. So once again, real quick, let's get back into flow state. We are back in. So this represents her melodic points. When this is full, you can hold dodge. Selena will summon multiple clones of herself and will do a full-on attack. This is a large chunk of Selena's damage. This is part of her core passive. We resonate core passive on the memories. Therefore, this is a chunk of damage. It's going to do a grip every time you use it. So that is the first thing to note for her unique attacks available in the flow state. So, and I apologize, I'm going to have to restart so many times, but that's kind of what we're dealing with because flow state has a timer. So one more time, we'll go back in. So if you have her at double S, you are always going to start with an entire stock of melodic points on deck. That's going to be good to go. The next things that you have available is you'll see the orbs are now replaced with these white concert orbs. These can only be pinged individually. So you will see if I ping these, once I've pinged 3 of them, we gain some more core passive gauge on the top bar, which I'll talk about in a second, and we gain a music note. You can still gain music notes while in flow state, but it will require you to ping 3 of the individual concert orbs. Once again, we'll reset so we can get back in the flow state. I can talk about the rest of the mechanics. So, all right, bring in, do the thing. Next part of flow state gauges. So you will notice that this top bar is slowly filling throughout the aspect of using flow state. If I do the whole dodge attack, you see we get a big chunk of it. If I start using concert orbs, you see we get another big chunk of it, as well as more of our melodic point gauge back. How this top bar works is that once it reaches completely full, that is how you unlock Selena's full ultimate. This is her regular ultimate. She goes into the conductor stance, she does the fortissimo and does an explosion, everything takes damage. Her full ult is very unique, and we'll talk about that in a second. We need to do some more with flow state here, so I have just enough orbs, so we'll just go back in that. Nope, never mind, it wasn't. Oh, right, because the whole thing ran out. That's why that doesn't work. Never mind. All right, that's what the reset button is for. Okay, back in once more. Except I didn't hold basic. Excellent. Live recording. All right. There we go. So, if we are to build up the flow state, and we get it to a max level here, and I hit the ultimate, you will see we go into a completely different ultimate where the flower blooms and then does a mass explosion. This does notably more damage than her basic ult out of flow state. This does a grip comparatively, and keep in mind, it does a grip when we are not resonating signature attack on our bottom memory resonance. So this is a very important aspect of Selena. It is also the aspect that I think might be the most misunderstood for her at low investment, but we'll get to that when we get to the rotations. An important thing to note about any ultimate during flow state is when you do an ultimate, doesn't matter if it's the regular ult or the full ult, you are going to be forced back into base form afterwards. That is universal. You cannot avoid it. You use an ult, you go back out of flow state. When you use the full ultimate, the flower bloom, Selena is going to get a debuff called noise. You'll see here up on the bar, and if you go into the pause menu, you'll see it here. You get 2 stacks of this debuff. What this debuff does is this will prevent Selena from using her full ultimate again until all the stacks of the debuff are gone. There is only 2 ways you can clear stacks of noise after using the full ult. The first is to do a regular ultimate in flow state. So if we do this, go back into flow state. I'm just going to get us to the fast ult real quick. So you'll see if I do her regular ultimate, we now have 1 stack of the music note. So we have 1 stack of noise remaining. Now, trying to go through 2 full rotations using the base ultimate instead of the full ultimate is going to take a long time and obviously going to deprive you of a lot of damage. Fortunately, there is another way to clear the noise debuff, and that is simply to take Selena off the field. When Selena leaves the field, she gets rid of 1 stack of noise if it exists. If no stacks of noise exist, then she just leaves, starts her phantom attacks, and all that good stuff happens. So you'll see when I bring Selena back in, no more noise. So She now has full ult on deck again and available. So very, very important aspect. It drastically impacts her rotation options at every rank. So just note that if you do the full ultimate, you have to do at least one other ultimate and have Selena leave the field if you want to be able to full ult again. So let's talk about some other stuff in flow state. So we'll get back in. Just like in the base form, you also have the hold basic attack. So the same thing applies. If you hold basic, you will force proc matrix and the blue orb will come online. The blue orb in full flow state has some pretty powerful abilities. It gives you a ton of both parts of your core passive, so it will give you a ton of melodic points as well as filling up the full ult bar. So it does have uses in flow state. However, it is a long animation. It is not something you want to use all the time because that animation does not trigger time stop. So you have to watch the entire thing play out to get that signature energy. That said, it still has uses and rotations. We'll go over that when we get there. But in general, your entire goal should be to get into flow state, utilize both the concert orbs, the hold to dodge, and the hold basic attacks to build up your core passives and do the most damage. Now let's talk some more finer details of how these orbs and things work together with one another. So back into flow state. So important to note, if you have done the hold to dodge attack, so you summon the clones and do the whole attack, after this attack, concert orbs will now deal double damage. Now, this would mostly imply that we always want to wait to use concert orbs until after we have done the melodic point dump attack, right? And in theory, that's correct. But in practice, there's actually some problems with that I have run into. And I'm going to show you what I mean. I'll go into even more detail with this when we get to her SS rotation. But I just kind of want to show you what I'm talking about here. So if I start pinging concert orbs immediately, look how fast that animation goes off, right? We get into this. We already have our ult online. If I want to do fast ult, we can let it rip, and we're already good to go. Now, obviously, those concert orbs did not get a damage bonus because I did them prior to using the hold to dodge attack and summoning all the clones. So if we go back in, and I wait to do it after. So I immediately go into hold the dodge. Watch how long it takes Selena to land before I can start pinging orbs. That animation cannot be canceled. When she is done summoning all the clones and doing the melodic point use, she has to slowly float back to the ground before you can start spamming orbs. That does slow you down significantly. And at certain ranks, I feel it actually makes it more of a detriment to try and get yourself doing the double damage off the white concert orbs, as opposed to using them immediately and saving yourself a lot of animation lag. So what you can do out of the hold to dodge attack, so back in one more time. So if I immediately hold the dodge, what you can do is you can hold basic attack once you have music notes built. Now, ideally, you will have a music note available by bringing Selena in, doing a 3-ping, using the hold basic, and doing another 3-ping. So if we do this as intended, what will happen is I'm going to go like this. And if we do this first, now we have a music note available. So immediately out of this animation, I can hold basic. She goes into the hold basic attack and dives down immediately, canceling out that float animation. So, depending on what rank you're at and what part of the rotation you're doing, it is oftentimes more beneficial to use the concert orbs first, get yourself a music note, and then be able to use that hold basic attack to cancel out of the hold dodge summon, clone summon, and not have to endure that long, slow float down to the floor before you can start doing things again in flow state. So what this basically means is that if we do flow state, immediately spin 3 white concert orbs, do the hold dodge attack afterwards and summon the clones and cancel that into the hold basic attack, not only is that going to cancel the animation, it's going to proc matrix because it works the same way in flow state as it does in base state, and it's going to give us our blue orb. So if we go into flow state and I go 1, 2, 3. Hold dodge. Hold basic. Use the blue orb. Full ult is online. Immediately online. That's really, really important. And it's going to be what I talk about a lot in the double S rotation, because this is the thing I found that kind of changes the game for this character at double S. But before we actually start talking rotations, let me just kind of show you the general game flow and give you an idea of what this is going to look like. So once again, our goal is going to be bring Selena in, immediate 3-ping, hold basic, another immediate 3-ping, use ult, and go into flow state. From flow state, depending on which rotation you're doing, you're either going to be using the hold to dodge attack out the gate, or you're going to be pinging concert orbs out the gate. One or the two is going to be your go-to once you get into flow state. Then, ideally, what you're going to do is build up enough to use her full ultimate, use it, get out of flow state. Then we're going to go through another rotation and use the fast ultimate out of flow state to cancel out one of those music note or the noise debuffs. Swap Selena off the field to cancel out the other noise debuff, and now she's back to square one and able to do a rotation again. So I'll try and do this slowly. It is kind of hard to do because her inputs are somewhat quick, but just to give you, again, the general game flow of what you're trying to accomplish. So bring Selena in, 3-ping, hold basic, 3-ping, flow state. I'm going to ping concert orbs, then I'm going to hold dodge. Now I'm going to hold basic. I'm going to use my blue orb. We ult. Back in base form, 3-ping, 3-ping. Because after using the hold to attack in flow state, we're not going to have access to that in base state again. We're not going to be able to force proc matrix. So when you come out of your first run of doing an ultimate out of flow state, you're just going to spam 2 3-pings as fast as possible, and that will get you enough signature energy to go back into flow state. So I have the noise debuff. There's nothing to do there, so we hold dodge. Obviously, I waited too long because I was talking, but you get the idea. So one more time here. Bring Selena in. Get into flow state. Going to spam some orbs. Going to spam hold dodge. Going to hold basic. Going to use the blue orb. And we ult. Now we're just going to spam 2 sets of 3-pings, and we're immediately back in flow state. And now we can go through the song and dance again. And this time we can just go ahead and go into the fast ult because we have no need to build up the gauge and get to the full ult because it's not available. We have a music note debuff. After that, we swap her out. All debuff stacks have been cleared. Selena is back to base level. She will be ready to come in and repeat her rotation from there. So that is the general game flow and game plan for this character. I find that it's really easy to just compartmentalize into this concept. When you see actual 3-pings, when you see your red and yellow orbs, their only purpose is getting you into flow state. This is just for you to build signature energy and get into flow state so you can start doing the real damage and using the real meat of Selena's kit. Once you're in flow state, you basically have 3 main things you're going to choose from to execute one of her rotations. You're either going to be using the white concert orbs, you're either going to be using the hold to dodge and have her clones come in and do that attack, or you're going to do hold basic, force proc a matrix, and go from there. All of this is in service of getting her to her second ult, getting damage, utilizing the core passive while she's in flow state. That's when she's going to get a lot of damage. This also means that when you use your QTEs actually is very important with this character. Normally, for a lot of characters, we just kind of wait until ults come up and we use our QTEs there. Or maybe if they have like a single big hit, think like Ishmael's axe kick, we might use it as that's going on because the Da Vinci proc is still going to go off while the ult animation plays out. But in Selena's case, because so much of her damage is also built into her core passive, especially in flow state, when we use our pings is actually going to be super important with this character, and I'll go over those with each rotation that we get to. But that should give you the base level of what you're trying to accomplish. Use your red and yellow orbs, use the hold basic attack, get yourself into flow state, utilize the mechanics of flow state to build up enough signature energy, build the core passive gauge to use those abilities, use your ult, repeat. So now we have the basis for how to do the rotations. I know this is long. The rotations are also going to be long because I have a lot to explain, because I am going out on a limb with my rotations and doing some stuff that I haven't really seen other people do, but that I think is going to be very useful, especially for lower invested players. So let's go in and start talking rotations next. All right, so before I start getting into the details of the rotations I've come up with for Selena, I do want to talk about some things and the process of how I got here first. I think this is very important. So I did a lot of research, kind of seeing what people had for their ideas for double S rotations, how people felt about the character at double S, and a lot of checking research, and then attempting a whole bunch of different routes to try and develop a rotation myself. As a reminder, Selena's not a very old character. She's only been around for about 4 months on the Chinese server. So all these characters are much less fleshed out, much less solved than some of our older characters. When I got the general vibe of how people felt about Selena at double S, a lot of people seem to comment that, one, she has a very hard time functioning without deadline timing. If you don't have deadline timing on her at double S with her signature weapon, she's only going to be able to do a single ult rotation. So getting into flow state, using the flow state mechanics, casting ult, and then she has to swap off the field because she will not have enough orbs to do a second ult rotation. That's obviously not ideal. That cuts your rotation short, and not being able to fit 2 ults is going to mess up, you know, your cooldowns for your other characters, all that good stuff. In addition, the other thing that I found is most people felt like Selena could not use her full ultimate, the giant flower bloom ultimate, at double S because it simply takes too much time to build up to. We don't have the luxury of the concert orbs giving double the ult gauge bar in the core passive, because that's a double S3 perk. We don't have access to the blue orb without pinging Matrix, because that is a triple S perk. So a lot of people are like, well, what you do is you get deadline timing on her, spam some concert orbs, spam the hold to dodge, cast your ult, repeat one more time, swap out. And I kind of messed with that idea when I was first trying to figure out a rotation that I liked and felt like was performing well, and I just wasn't satisfied with what I was seeing. So I did an absurd amount of testing, a ton of doing different rotations over and over again, comparing them against each other, seeing how long it took time-wise to get through the rotation, the overall damage, all of that good stuff. We're not going to talk about how many hours I spent coming up with the rotation I'm going to show you, because it was a lot. It was an absurd amount of testing, but I think it's really, really important that we as content creators really dig deep on these new characters, because there's just not as much information. There's a lot more room that it's possible that the player base has missed something that's an optimization, or that smooths out rotations, or makes the characters easy to play. So I am not going to sit here and tell you the rotations I am about to give you are gospel, and these are 100% absolutely going to be the best thing you can find. But at least in my own testing, I am more than confident enough in saying that I feel comfortable sharing these with all of you, that you can use as the baseline for your own experimentation. Now, as always, I encourage you to check out other guide makers, see what other people are coming up with for their Selena rotations, compare them with mine, and then compare that with your own experiences and your own playtesting, and see if you find any new optimizations. The more people are messing around, the more we're trying to find new things, the better all of these potential rotations and optimizations get. That's the cool part about having an entire community playing a game. It's more eyes, it's more different mindsets to look at the characters. So just wanted to kind of get that out there. I think that's really important, and I am absolutely not trying to throw shade at anyone else's rotations or concepts. Again, we're all kind of trying new stuff here. There just isn't a full year of information on these characters like there used to be. So this is a new era for us as content creators, and for everyone playing on Global. But I'm going to go through, show you the rotation I've come up with before I start breaking down everything and showing you how this works. The reason I really like this rotation I'm about to show you for double S is that it does a couple things that I think really improve Selena's output at this rank. One, I found a way to consistently get the full ultimate, the Flower Bloom ultimate, built into the rotation and not drastically increase the amount of time it takes to get through the rotation, because obviously if you're adding 4 or 5 seconds to your rotation, that's probably 4 or 5 seconds where the amplifier buff has long worn off, and that's a big deal. You want to keep teammates swapping out to keep that amplifier buff up as much as you possibly can. So able to fit the flower bloom in without drastically increasing the amount of time it takes. But the most important part of this rotation I'm going to show you that I found is this actually removes the need for deadline timing for Selena to function at SS. You still need the signature weapon, as I mentioned in the build section, but you no longer need a weapon resonance for Selena to function at this rank. What you are going to need is to have Echo using Lingya and having her do a 3-ping to start off the entire fight, because that orb that Lingya passes on is going to be enough to make it so Selena does not need deadline timing anymore. I know Lingya says it passes on a blue orb, and Selena's blue orb is her locked orb, her orb that's always on the first button, right? It still passes an orb. Selena will have 9 orbs on the field to start instead of 8 if you have her at SS and Base Awakening, all that good stuff. So Lingya is a requirement, but Lingya's a free cub. It's an A rank. You don't have to level it or skill it to use the passive. All you have to do is equip that skill, use a single 3-ping with Echo, and you're good to go. You will have enough orbs to not need deadline timing. Not needing deadline timing is massive. One, that's a weapon resonance you don't have to use. That is effectively 7,500 black cards you no longer have to spend. Now, we can get weapon resonances through the shards that we get by doing Norman Revival. Occasionally events or login stuff will give us some weapon resonance shards. So you can build up weapon resonances as a free-to-play without going and rolling extra weapons out of the gacha. But that takes a very long time, and weapon resonances, once you put them on, they're locked on. You can swap which resonance you're using, but that resonance is gone. So this alleviates the need for deadline timing, which means if you're really tight on your budget because you're saving for DMC around the corner, you now no longer have to come up with 7,500 black cards or a 6-star weapon that you can recycle into a weapon resonance for Selena. In addition to that, if you do want to use weapon resonances on Selena, now you can focus on the damage-based resonances. So Matrix Lightning and all that stuff that increases the overall damage. So that's just a bigger damage increase for this rotation I'm going to show you. So my testing, this rotation does take about a second to a second and a half longer than a lot of the rotations I saw, but the damage output was notably larger. And to double check this, what I started doing was going into war zones. Unfortunately, on the test server, I have yet to get a physical-based war zone available to me, so I've been doing off element. But every single time I use the rotation I'm about to show you, compared to other ones that I tested or other ones that I found from various Warzone videos and guides and stuff out there, I always scored better with my rotation. There's always more variables in Warzone. Little things happen. Sometimes enemies get away. I did extensively and exclusively the single boss Warzone, so I didn't have to worry about a random enemy running away or stuff like that, kind of creating a variable that would have made things worse. But from my testing, the rotation I'm going to show you was the best thing I could come up with. It alleviates the need for deadline timing, and it does really good damage. So we're going to go through. I'm going to explain how this works, and we'll go from there. So first things first, you fire off your yellow orb with Echo, bring Selena onto the field, and then we're going to do our 3-ping into hold basic, into the matrix ping, do our first ult, and now we go into flow state. From here, what we're going to do is we are going to immediately ping 3 concert orbs. Only need to do 3 of them. From there, we go into the hold to dodge. Now, a lot of the SS rotations, you'll see, this is where they would go ahead and just cast ult. Cast ult, get back into flow state by using 2 more 3-pings and deadline timing, and do it again. Here is what I have found that works really well. So one thing I also want to note, and I'll show this in the annotations when we get things going, but instead of saving your QTEs for when you start the hold to dodge, the core passive stuff, you want to use your QTEs the moment you go into flow state. So when you cast your first ult to go into flow state, this is where you want to proc your QTEs with this rotation. This is important because the rotation I'm doing is going to allow enough time for these to come back up right before we cast our full Flower Bloom ult. So back to the basics here. 3 concert orb pings, then we hold dodge, do the clone attack. From here, what we are going to do is start holding basic attack. You can buffer this. You don't have to wait for any animations to end. Once you see the last couple clones slash through, you can go ahead and start holding basic. So I'm going to hold basic. That causes the dive attack to happen, and that also activates our blue orb. We're going to hit the blue orb, go into the cinematic, and as you can see, right as the blue orb finishes, the full ult gauge is now full. This means the Flower Bloom is online, and looky here, our QTEs are back up. We cast the full ult, we proc our QTEs, big old chunk of damage. Big chunk of damage. This is why this rotation consistently performed better for me. It also makes sure that we get the full ultimate off before the amplifier buff has worn off. We haven't crossed the 10-second threshold yet. We are still getting the bonus for that. So that's a huge part of the damage and why this works. After this, we're going to spam 2 red orbs to get back into flow state. Something important to note, a little optimization when you are pinging 2 3 pings. Again, from here, we're not going to have hold basic backup, so we can't do 3 ping, hold basic, matrix ping. So we have to do 2 3 pings. If you can, and it will depend on orb RNG, but if you can, ideally do a red 3 ping first, then a yellow 3 ping. The reason for this is that the animation on the red orb is much shorter, so you can do 3 ping much quicker and cancel out the animation of the yellow orbs by casting your ultimate. It doesn't save a boatload of time. It's not the biggest optimization in the world, but it is a little thing that if you could keep track of will add up over the course of a full Warzone run. So just keep in mind, this goes for any time that you are pinging orbs outside of flow state. You want to try and use red orbs first to build up your ult. But we do our 2 3 pings, we go back into flow state. From here, we only need 2 concert orbs. That's all it's going to take to build up enough to start the hold to dodge, and then we can go ahead and let the fast ult rip. So 2 concert orbs, hold dodge, the clones come out, we immediately go into the fast ult. It plays out, and then we will swap to our next character. So that is the double S rotation. From here, I'm going to go ahead and do it at full speed, annotate everything, and I'll put everything off to the side just like I have in the other guides. But here we go. Double S yet again. So Alyssa comes in. Alyssa yellow 3 ping, brings Selena 3 ping, hold basic 3 ping. Ult 1. 3 concert orbs, hold dodge, hold basic attack, blue orb, full ult, call the QTEs. 2 3 pings, ult again. 2 concert orbs, hold dodge, ult 2. Ult plays out. QTEs will not be back up for this. Ult finishes. Swap to your next character. There is your double S rotation without deadline timing. All of my rotations will not require deadline timing. You can just ignore it. I have found a way to eliminate deadline timing from the equation. If you want deadline timing, you still can use it. There might be times where deadline timing is useful, but as far as my testing goes, you don't need it. The other cool part about this specific rotation, this one right here, this also works just fine for double S3. You can actually copy paste this over to double S3 with basically one minor change. That being that on the second round through the flow state, you're going to ping 3 concert orbs again instead of 2. That would be the only difference. But if you want to use this rotation for double S3, it effectively loses no damage or no time loss compared to the alternate double S3 I'm going to show you. It is about a second slower by my timings, but it does more damage. So pick whichever one you want. I'll go over the double S3 one here in a second, but for the double S3 rotation, the one I'm going to show you is slightly faster than this double S rotation, but it also does slightly less damage. So you'll have to make your own assessments while you're doing Warzone on which one is better. Do you just want to go faster because you need to fit in one more ultimate, or do you need extra damage to All right, so we're going to take a look at a double S3 rotation now. As I mentioned prior, if you just want to copy paste the double S rotation, if you're at double S3, you absolutely can do that. The double S rotation I showed does take a tiny bit longer, as I mentioned, but it will do a little bit more damage than this alternate rotation. In terms of absolute raw optimization, I think this alternate rotation is going to be ever so slightly better. I could not get a very good score comparison in Warzone, especially since they're off-element Warzones with no physical ones available to me on the test server currently. But I think this alternate one might just barely edge out the double S rotation if you're using it over the course of an entire Warzone run. But my honest suggestion to you is try the double S rotation I just showed, and then try this alternate double S3 rotation, and pick whichever one feels better for you. Whatever feels more smooth, makes more sense, and keeps you doing your rotation and keeping things flowing, just use that, because they're very, very, very close in efficiency from all my testing. This is not the big jump in gains that I was finding with the double S rotations. So let's go through how this one works. We're going to start it off the same. Echo is going to come in, use her yellow 3-ping to launch forward and get the QTE for Han Ying, and of course pass on an orb to Selena. Selena comes in, same thing as before. We're going to do a 3-ping, hold basic, matrix ping, and go into our first ult to get into flow state. Now, here's where things will start changing a little bit. So we're going to call our QTEs as the ult animation plays out. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to immediately spam all 6 concert orbs. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. From here, we go into the hold to dodge, and then we're going to cast our QTEs. If you want, after the hold to dodge, you can do hold basic to proc matrix and have matrix ready for the 2 3-pings you're going to have to do back in base state. I kind of like doing that just because it means I don't have to worry about looking where my 3-ping is as opposed to a single ping that might be on the front. But you can also just do 3-ping, hold basic, ping again like you do to get into flow state the first time. Whatever's more comfortable for you, but if you want a little quality of life, I recommend doing the hold basic attack after the clones attack in flow state. You don't have to let it play out. You can just do it to proc matrix and then cast the ult. But our ult plays out. We go back into base state. So I didn't do the hold to basic in this example before casting our full bloom ult. So I'm going to do a 3-ping, hold basic, use the matrix ping. Ult is back online, so we go back into flow state. This time we're going to cast 2 orbs. You do not need a third for this to get to the next ultimate. Cast the fast second ultimate, and Selena swaps out. Pretty straightforward. This one's pretty easy to do. So let's go through it one more time in real time so I can do the annotations for you all. So once again, alternate double S3 rotation. Echo yellow 3-ping, bring in Selena, 3-ping, hold basic 3-ping, ult. 6 concert orbs, hold dodge. Cast ult. Ping, hold basic, matrix ping, ult again. 2 concert orbs, hold dodge, call your QTEs, and cast ult. Ult animation finishes. Selena swaps off. That is your double S3 rotation, no deadline timing required. Again, I encourage you to mess around with this and the double S rotation. Pick whichever one feels better for you, and we will move on to the triple S rotation. All right, so the triple S rotation is where things are going to change up a decent amount. The triple S upgrades enable some stuff that's going to speed up the rotation and make things a lot smoother to kind of get in and out of flow state and get the ultimates off a bit quicker. So we will be doing a lot of different things. We get the upgrade where the blue orb just becomes active. We also get the upgrade where instead of doing 3-ping, hold basic, and then needing to do a matrix ping, now when we do 3-ping into hold basic, it's going to consume all our available orbs to immediately build up the music note stat for us. So we're only going to have to do a 3-ping, hold basic. That's going to get our ult online immediately, so we just go from there. It speeds up the first part of the rotation quite a bit. Once we get into flow state, our blue orb's going to be active. We're going to use that out the gate, and that's going to be how this rotation starts coming together. This one, I feel pretty comfortable saying this is probably the best triple S rotation, at least from what I could find with my testing so far. The upgrades just kind of enable this to be a lot more smoother, and every other routing I tried wasn't really far off in efficiency. The damage was normally comparable, sometimes maybe even slightly more, but every other route I found was just notably slower or eventually just fell off damage comparatively. So, again, not saying this is the gospel for Triple S, but I feel pretty comfortable saying this is one that you can learn, master, and roll with it at Triple S. You're going to get pretty good results. So we start off yet again. Echo comes in, yellow 3-ping, swap her out. Selena comes in, has her extra orb from the Lingya passive. So we're going to do 3-ping, hold basic, and as you see, the orbs are immediately gone. They are immediately consumed when we hold basic. Our ult comes up, and we get the music note stats, so we can go right in. As our ult animation plays, call the QTEs immediately. Now, for flow state, how we're going to start this off instead is, since our blue orb is already active and we have everything locked and loaded here, we are going to go ahead and immediately ping the blue orb to start flow state. So the blue orb animation plays out. From here, we're going to ping 3 concert orbs. 3 concert orbs is going to give us enough gauge to go into our hold to dodge, call the clones, and you'll see now we've already filled up the full ult gauge, and you're going to notice right as the clone attack finishes, oh look, our QTEs are back up online. Absolutely pristine timing. So now we do our full bloom ult, we call the QTEs, and we are back in base state. So from here, we're going to do 3-ping, hold basic. This time you will need to do a matrix ping because the consuming of all the orbs is a one time after being brought on the field perk. So we do have to do a matrix ping again. Go back into flow state. From here, just as before, 3 concert orbs, hold dodge. QTEs won't be back up online for this. We cast our second ult. And then Selena will swap out after the animations. So pretty straightforward. Again, having the blue orb online immediately just smooths out this section of the rotation a lot. Makes it very, very smooth and really good timing to get the full ultimate online right as our QTEs come back up. That is what really churns out the damage for this particular rotation. And it just goes real smooth. So let's go from the top so you can have the annotations and watch along. So Triple S rotation, no deadline timing. Echo yellow 3-ping, Selena comes in, 3-ping, hold basic, ult. Call your QTEs. Blue orb, 3 concert orbs, hold dodge. Cast full ult, call the QTEs. 3-ping, hold basic, matrix ping, ult. 3 concert orbs, hold dodge. Second ult. Ult animation plays out. QTEs won't be online. Selena swaps out. There is your triple S rotation. That is all of them. That is all the rotations. I know this took way longer than it normally took. Again, I put a lot of time into testing this. I really felt like there was something better out there, and I was very happy with what I found, especially for that double S rotation. The double S rotation does actually work at triple S. If you just want to learn one rotation and never switch, you can use it. It's definitely an efficiency loss compared to this triple S rotation, because going into the blue orb first, into the concert orbs, doesn't have any animation lag between it. So that's what really smooths out that first run through the flow state for triple S. But that wraps up all the rotations. You will be able to use these in Warzone, and that pretty much covers all of how to play Selena. So this is probably going to be the longest guide I've done. I haven't calculated up all the time. I know it's over an hour, and I apologize for that, but there's so much going on. So let's get to the outro, wrap everything up, and let's put a bow on this way too long guide. All right, now we're finally through the rotations, the pull, the build, all that fun stuff, and we are finally to an outro of sorts. No Phantom Pain Cage or Warzone demo because this guide's too long. This guide is way too long, and again, I do apologize for that. For Phantom Pain Cage, you can essentially use the rotations I've showed you as your baseline, and just test and modify based on your kill threshold. See if you need to get into an ult faster, see if you need to build to the full ult. It's really going to depend on what boss you're fighting and how tanky they are to determine what you should do for Phantom Pain Cage. Again, if you want to go full min-max with it, you can build a second memory set for Han Ying and resonate the class skill on all of them. Swap out her actual damage set for some more physical support sets. That is an option if you want to get min-maxy with it. But in general, you're just going to have to test for Phantom Pain Cage. There's way too many variables at this point, and I've done so much testing, and you guys don't want to listen to this guide any longer. I don't want to listen to this guide any longer, and I'm the one making it. But with that, this does wrap up the Selena guide. I know it was super long. I know it's verbose, but this was truly a unique situation for a character guide. First and foremost, we have Devil May Cry. It is basically 6 weeks away from the time of this video going up, and that absolutely changes the equation on how I should recommend if you pull and build this character, because a ton of people, and I know a lot of the people who watch this channel, you're playing this game because the Devil May Cry collab is what got you interested. You've come over to PGR, you've been waiting for DMC, you've probably been waiting for months and months now. And with a character in Vergil coming who can effectively do the same role that Selena does, although not at the same efficiency if they're equally invested, that's going to change the game for a lot of people. And that's why I made the recommendations I did and reminded you over and over again, you're going to have to assess your own resource situation. You're going to have to determine if it is worth it and if you can afford to pull this character and pull her signature weapon. Bare minimum, you need both. You're just going to have both. Double S in the SIG is required. Now, that said, the other reason this guide was so long, obviously, was the rotations. This was far and away the most amount of testing, research, and just endless number crunching and note checking that I have ever done for any of these character guides. This took a long time, obviously, and it's why this guide is so long. It's why I had to spend so much time explaining. But I do think the results were worth it. I think it was worth all that time and effort. I am actually very proud of that double S rotation I came up with, mostly just because it frees Selena from deadline timing. Not having to have a weapon resonance for this character might be the difference between her being a viable pull for those of you on a budget versus not. Some of you might look at this and go, I need to roll the character, I have to roll her weapon, and I have to have a weapon resonance or go roll a second weapon to build her. That's going to put off a lot of people with Devil May Cry 6 weeks away. So freeing deadline timing, I think, was probably the best accomplishment I could have hoped for with this guide, and I feel like I got there. So with all that said, 6 weeks away from DMC, 2 new S ranks before we even get there. I know this is a very difficult time that is going to force some very difficult decisions for a lot of players out there. And if you're new and you're feeling overwhelmed with trying to get everything ready, trying to make sure you're going to have enough resources to get what you want out of the DMC collab, again, I will never blatantly tell you to skip new S ranks because it is harder to build them later when they are no longer on 100% rate up. But once again, DMC collab is one time only unless a miracle happens. Selena will come back. Vera will come back. There will be ways to get them at 100% rate up. And we're almost done with the global sync, which means these characters have a very, very long lifespan ahead of them. Selena is going to be able to be your physical attacker for probably a couple years at this rate. So assess what you think is the correct choice for pulling and building. If you gotta save for DMC, you gotta save for DMC. It is a unique thing. It is going to be the biggest event in PGR history, so I get it. But if you want Selena, she is incredibly strong. I think she's really fun to play, and I think she feels very, very intuitive to use once you know how all the little pieces of her kit intertwine with one another. Hopefully this guide taught you that, and I've done my best to kind of explain everything in a way that's digestible. I know that sounds asinine to say in a guide that is well over an hour long, but if you stuck with it this long, thank you. I don't know why you would have, but I do greatly appreciate it. Again, it's a lot of time and effort in these guides, but I absolutely feel every bit of it is worth it. So as always, if you have any questions, if you want me to give my input on your pull and build options or what your resources are looking like for Devil May Cry, feel free to leave a comment down below. I'll give you any information and help I can. And if you find any tweaks to these rotations, if you see something that I just missed, and it's entirely possible, I am just one person, there's only so much I can account for on my own with the small bits of available Selena footage that was out there on the Chinese server and such. If you find something, let me know. I want to, if there are optimizations I missed, I want to be able to share those with the rest of the community. I want to be able to put that in a pinned comment and make sure people know, hey, we found a thing. Because, again, to me, that is one of the coolest parts about being part of an online gaming community is just finding new stuff, sharing new information, finding a new way to be more optimal or make a character better than they already were. I don't know, man. I just think that's one of the coolest things you can do in gaming. So, all right, that's enough. You have all listened to me ramble for way too long. As always, thank you so much for the support. Thank you for the feedback. I do appreciate it. If you want to do the YouTube stuff, like, comment, subscribe. It's always appreciated. It's never necessary. But for now, I have to go immediately back into the lab, and I have to start figuring out how to play Vera because I have to have another guide out in a week. So let's go, baby. Crunch time ahoy. As always, y'all take care, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.